Hey Taurus, you have some explaining to do. Let's talk about it. What's up, Wolverines, and welcome back to the channel. It is me, John Crump, Gundy nominee. After you watch this video, head over to thegundys.com and vote for me for top voices of the 2A. Everyone wins awards besides me, so I want to be a winner. While you're at it, go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. I'm really curious what you think about the situation down below. I want to thank Dr. Depth, who is from the 3D printing community, for supplying me the original document in Portuguese, which I then translated into English with the help of Google. Before we get into today's story, we got to talk about Brazil. Brazil just changed presidents. Their old president kind of relaxed gun regulations, and the new president came in and he wants to put all regulations back into play. I have no idea what my kids are doing, but it sounds like they're rolling something across the floor. So let's get back into the story. The National Association of Arms and Ammunition Industry, which is basically Brazil's version of our NSSF, has released a letter to the president. One of the main players in this organization is Taurus. The other one is CBC. And if you don't know, Taurus and CBC are both Brazilian-based companies. And what this letter says is that they want the government to crack down on importations of firearms because they think that they are not being imported for the right reasons. In Brazil, firearms are heavily regulated. You can only use them for a certain number of things. Hunting, subsistence hunting, control hunting, sport shooting is a couple of the exceptions that you can use them for. And it is regulated how many that you're allowed to own and what calibers you're allowed to own and how many rounds of ammunition that you are allowed to own as well. Things like overthrowing a tyrannical government isn't a reason to own a firearm in Brazil. It's just not a thing. Now, this organization that Taurus is a massive part of, some would say the most major part of, is asking the government to do a few different things. And I think a lot of this has to do with importation, because under the old president, he kind of relaxed importation of firearms and ammunition, and it probably squeezed Taurus's bottom line. They complained that ammunition and firearms were being imported into Brazil without the correct markings and also without being introduced into the government's computerized system, which makes them harder to track. And they have a couple different suggestions to go ahead and help rectify the situation. And now we're going to get into some really sketchy things, which I think is going to upset a lot of people that own Tauruses. The first thing is they want the Brazilian government to create a regulatory agency around firearms, and also not only to establish controls of firearms, but help confiscate them if necessary, penalize, inspect, and criminally prosecute people. Basically, an ATF for Brazil. And they actually talk about how the United States has an organization in the government that does things like this, the ATF. So basically, they are telling Brazil to make their own ATF, which is kind of scary. They also want the federal government to regulate calibers to 38, 357, 380s, and 9mm for civilian uses. Those might happen to be the calibers that Taurus produces, but I don't know. I have to ask Taurus about that. Maybe I'll check out 2AEDU. He knows a lot about Tauruses. Maybe they produce other calibers, but they want those calibers to be classified for civilian use and other calibers to be classified for restricted use, such as rifle calibers, which is not good in my opinion, because it is limiting what the people can have. They also want to return to the previous rule of importation, where you can import a gun or caliber of round if there is a domestic producer of a firearm that's similar. Basically, they want to cut the legs out of any of the competition out there by preventing any firearms from coming into the country that they would have to compete against, which would lower down prices and be free market capitalism. I guess they're not free market capitalists. Sounds kind of socialist to me. They also want an amnesty for the classification of acquirers and people who have expired registration. Basically, trying to get people back on the books that decided to let their registrations expire, which makes it easier to track and makes it easier to know what people have. They also want to return to the previous rule for revocation every 5 years, as established in 2016. A shorter period encourages illegality and overloads of competent bodies. Basically, they want records to be held for longer. They also want a single online control system to track the movement of firearms and the registration of firearms across the country. A registration, basically, which isn't a good thing. They want ammo supplies to be controlled by the same system, with reduced quantities allowed for sports shooters and subsistence and control hunters. So they want the amount of ammunition that a person can own to be stricken down to nearly nothing, because that means that they can sell them more ammunition, probably. I don't know. I'm just guessing at that, but I'm pretty sure that's what they want, because they can sell smaller quantities over time. It adds up to more money. But that's just what I'm thinking, and I could be conspiratorial there, but probably not. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. They want the acquisition of firearms to be only for permitted use with reduced quantities. Right now, you're allowed to have 6 firearms. They want to go down to 4, with the possibility of only having 1 gun for each residence, up to a total limit of 4 guns per residence. This is ridiculous. I'm not really even sure what this is for or why they would want this, but it's in here, so there must be a reason. I just can't put my finger on why. And they want to prevent the transportation and circulation of firearms in national territories. If you are a landowner, you do get 2 extra guns, which is kind of interesting that landowners get something extra over the regular population. If you don't know, Brazil's a really, really poor country, so there's not a lot of landowners there. The military members will be restricted to the same regulations as the civilian population, with the exception of they get 2 firearms for restricted uses. Also, there needs to be an institution, according to them, for the authorization of acquisition of weapons and ammunition for permitted uses. Now they have a suggestion for different types of classification for gun owners. You have a beginner sports shooter, which is only permitted weapons. Then you have a full sports shooter, which is weapons for restricted uses, and proof is required. You have to be a member of a league or something like that, but you have to submit proof. Then you have a high performance sports shooters, which is like equal to an advanced full sports shooter. And once again, you need proof. Then you have the hunter categories, which are subsistence hunters and hunter control, which controls the population of certain animals. And then you have collectors, where the circulation of arms and ammunition is prohibited except when authorized. And they want the government to revoke the transit permits and establish a circulation of weapons in the collection, and it must be carried out without ammunition. So let me know what you think about all this. Do you think Taurus went totally anti-gun in their home country and didn't think that we were going to find out? Do you think it's their organization that they are the major part of and they just didn't, for some reason, notify Taurus? What is Taurus going to do? Are they going to drop out of this organization, or are they going to continue to move on forward with this organization? I'm very, very curious. Can Taurus push back and get the organization to revoke the letter that they sent? I don't know. We'll have to find out. I am very, very curious, but as for right now, I have Tauruses. I'm not going to sell them. I'm not going to destroy them or anything crazy like that. I just will never buy another Taurus until they address this issue, which is maybe a good thing because Taurus. All right, guys. I love you very much. Stay ever vigilant. Stay ever free. Keeping the fight. I am out of here. Wolverines, motherfucker.